Tonight's matchup, The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. Hit him!
So you all know how much I love pro wrestling. I've spent most of my entire life consuming and being invested in it. So I don't see no point in stopping now, despite the fact that the current WWE product is the drizzling shits. And AEW shows promise, yet they still have a very long ways to go before they can truly consider themselves competition. With that said, I figured I'd dip my head into another wrestling game since I've already made a video review on the 4 NES WWF games, which you should totally check that video out. Nevertheless, in this video I want to talk about a certain wrestling game that I hold near and dear to my heart, as it was the very first wrestling game I ever played. And that is, of course, WWF Wrestlemania, the arcade game on the Super Nintendo.
Listen, Joe, I walked through arcades today and I see absolutely nothing to turn young players on. Nothing really grabs you. A game is a game is a game is a game.
Originally released in the arcades in 1995, WWF Wrestlemania the arcade game was developed by Midway, who are best known for the innovator of violent fighting games Mortal Kombat. And just like Mortal Kombat, this game is of course an arcade-style fighting game, which also uses digitized graphics by having the actual wrestlers portray themselves in the game. You had Bret the Hitman Hart, Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, Lex Luger, Doink the Clown, Yokozuna, Bam Bam Bigelow, and the Phenom himself, The Undertaker. Yet, unlike Mortal Kombat, the game isn't quite heavy on the gore side. Instead, you see the wrestlers performing outlandish attacks. Instead of blood, the wrestlers would bleed Valentine hearts, cartoonish-style bones, dumbbells, and anything else that isn't human blood. Also, there weren't any fatalities, even though it would have been awesome to see The Undertaker rip out Doink the Clown's heart or spinal column. Yet I don't think Vince McMahon would allow for such a thing to reflect his product.
You know what's missing? A game that just rocks!
But still, I remember as a kid seeing this game at my local skating rink in the arcade room, and was amazed at the fact that there was a WWF game that was a lot like Mortal Kombat. Yet, I never actually got the chance to play the original arcade version. Instead, I played this game on my Super Nintendo, which that was the version that I had. And yes, there is also a Sega Genesis version as well, and both versions were handled by Sculptured Software, who also handled the console ports of Mortal Kombat. And just to get this out of the way, both ports are pretty much the same game and play just as well as each other. Yet the Genesis version features all 8 wrestlers, whereas the Super Nintendo version only has 6, leaving out Yokozuna and Bam Bam Bigelow. The Genesis version also allows 4 wrestlers in the ring at once, just like in the original arcade, whereas the Super Nintendo version only allows 3 wrestlers in the ring at once. However, in terms of graphics and sound, the Super Nintendo version has the Genesis beat on that. Yet regardless, you can't go wrong with either one in my opinion, so I say play both of them.
Side headlocks, clotheslines, big elbows, chokeholds, sleepers, you name it, Joe, it'll be in there.
So with all that said and done, let's get into the actual game. So as I've mentioned, the Super Nintendo version only has 6 wrestlers to choose from. You have Bret the Hitman Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Razor Ramon, Doink the Clown, and Lex Luger. There is also an options menu which allows you to change the difficulty of the game, how much health you want to have, and the option to turn the music off. Which I can't help but ask, why would you want to do that and miss the chance to listen to each of the wrestlers' theme music in 16-bit glory? What is wrong with you? But nevertheless, you choose your wrestler and you get to hear their name being announced by Vince McMahon himself. That's right, this game features the voices of Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary, which just adds more to the overall experience as it makes me feel like I'm watching a wrestling match play out on television. But yeah, the music and sound is perhaps one of the highlights to this port, as each wrestler has their own theme and each theme is perfectly replicated in 16-bit form. Oh, it's true. It's damn true.
We're gonna walk right into this industry and grab them right by the...
Hold on.
Now this game offers 2 modes for single player. There's the WWF Intercontinental title or WWF World title. Regardless which mode you choose, you'll be going through the entire roster like you normally would in a fighting game. Yet, unlike your typical arcade-style fighting game, this game will have you facing multiple fighters at once. In the arcade version, you could have up to 4 wrestlers in the ring at the same time, yet I guess due to hardware limitations, the SNES version only allows 3 wrestlers in the ring at once, while the other wrestler has to wait their turn like a child waiting in line. I should also mention, with a limited roster, most of your matches will be you facing against your color swap doppelganger, which is honestly one of the most hilarious things about this game, especially when Vince McMahon announces Bret the Hitman Hart versus Bret the Hitman Hart, which I guess you could say Bret is wrestling with his own shadows. Oh, come on, somebody has to get that reference.
I started with the basics. Before you get a project like this, you really have to know the ropes.
In terms of controls, it's as easy as applying the figure 4. You have your standard punch and kick, which is your Y and B buttons, your high punch and high kick, which is your X and A buttons, and blocking, which is your L and R buttons. And much like in the vein of Mortal Kombat, each wrestler has their own set of signature moves, and they are outlandish and funny as all hell. Like you have the Undertaker who bashes people over the head with a tombstone, or you have Doink the Clown hitting people with his trusty hammer and his shock glove, giving me yet another reason to never trust clowns. The only downside I have with performing some of these signature moves is the fact that they don't do quite as much damage as they should unless you're performing combos. Yet 9 times out of 10, you're going to rely on your running attack or performing combos, as those seem to do more damage than anything. I should also mention, not only can you move in the ring in any direction you want, you can also climb the turnbuckle and perform high flying moves, and you can go outside of the ring if you want to continue the carnage out there. Besides the outlandish moves, each wrestler also bleeds certain objects when you hit them, which, as silly as it may seem, I think it's hilarious. Especially Lex Luger bleeding dumbbells, which I guess kinda makes sense because he's a bodybuilder wrestler, but what do you think, Lex?
I don't know! Come on, you guys. There it is, right there in front of you the whole time. You're dereferencing a no-pointer. Open your eyes.
Now, as much as I love this game and how much fun I had with it as a kid, this is the part where I take off my rose-tinted glasses and point out some of the flaws I have with this game. For the most part, the game runs excellently in 60 frames per second. Yet, in the SNES version, there is major slowdown, and this becomes a hindrance to the game, especially when I'm trying to perform running moves. And this problem usually occurs during handicap matches. And speaking of handicap matches, this brings me to my next issue I have with this game: the lack of features. I understand this is supposed to be an arcade-style fighting game, but it's also supposed to be a wrestling game. Hell, even though the NES games were bad, at least they had different match types. In this game, you only have single matches and handicap matches, which seems to be what this game likes to throw at you, as you mostly find yourself in 1-on-2 or 1-on-3 matches. And to imagine what the game would run like if you had 4 wrestlers in the ring at the same time, holy Christ. And this might be a nitpick, but I feel like the roster in this game is so weak. They could have included other popular wrestlers like Owen Hart, the British Bulldog, King Kong Bundy, fucking Mantar. Yeah, that last one was a joke, but yeah, why not have either of those 3 that I mentioned, instead of having Doink the Clown, who wasn't that popular, and Lex Luger, who was gone from the company at that time. But that's just my opinion. Take it as you will.
Just like that, but punch it up with a little more bass.
So at the end of the day, WWF Wrestlemania, the arcade game on the Super Nintendo, is still just as fun as I remembered it to be. Sure, it may seem outlandish and cartoony, yet I appreciate the fact that it tried to be different from Mortal Kombat, which around this time there was a lot of Mortal Kombat knockoffs, so regardless, the gameplay is still mindless fun. Now, there was a sequel to this game called WWF In Your House, which was only released on consoles. It was released for the PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and DOS. And trust me when I say this is a really terrible game. And I do plan on doing a review of this later down the line, but for right now, I'm just gonna wait and sort of cool my jets for a bit, because I think I've had enough of these wrestling games for the time being. But let me know what you thought about this review in the comment section below, and also be sure to subscribe to this channel for more future in-depth reviews just like this one. Also, follow me on Twitter at CanvasPirate, as I look forward to any suggestions you may have. But anyways, this has been Pirate Canvas, and I'm signing off. Until next time, stay classy, people.
Any questions?
Just one. Can we play it?
Let's do it, Mr. D.